Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Side Hustle Ideas. I'm Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. This is the weekly live stream where we talk all about entrepreneurship and everything related, including side hustles and that kind of thing. As always, a shout out goes out to my YouTube channel members. Membership has its privileges. And my Patreons, my super thanks donors, and of course to you, my participants. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. The title of today's episode is called Overcoming Fear and Self-Doubt. This is episode number 98. So we are going to talk about that. If you are somebody who wants to start a business or you want to do your own kind of thing on the side that brings in money, but you don't know where to start, or you're just not wanting to take the plunge. You do, but you don't want to. You know what I mean? It's this kind of internal battle, and this is a very real thing and something that doesn't get enough acknowledgement, especially for young people that are starting out, and something that I haven't really spoken about much on my channel, even though I've been talking about business and entrepreneurship for years. So we are going to get into that today. But as always, I want to do a challenge for everybody. First of all, this is primarily a live Q&A, so I'm here to answer your questions. So if you've been a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should see a chat box somewhere in the vicinity of my face. Get in the chat and let me know what's up with you, what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with, related to entrepreneurship, presumably, and the fear of entrepreneurship, that kind of thing, and I will do my best to help you out. Also, I want to issue a live challenge to everybody. Put in the chat box your suggestion of yours for what would be a good side hustle idea, and we can kick it around, discuss it. But without any further ado, let's get on with the main topic, overcoming fear and self-doubt. I've worked with a lot of younger people, and I've taught entrepreneurship, and this is something that is probably the biggest stumbling block of all, is that people want to do this, but they're afraid to do it. And I think that it really stems from the fact that it's not the default thing that people do. You know, for example, getting a job, that's more of a default thing for most people. You just kind of do that as a matter of course. It's expected of you. But, going into business for yourself, that's not necessarily the default thing that everybody does, right? Let's be honest about it. So a lot of the fear and stuff derives from that, first of all, and then the whole psychology of can I do it and all this kind of stuff comes afterwards, right? So let's talk about it, the overcoming fear and self-doubt. What's your biggest fear? If you're here and you're listening to me, put in the chat, what's your biggest fear, when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to doing your own thing, starting a side hustle or whatever? Is it the fact that, you're going to put in a bunch of work and it's not going to come to anything? Or is it, maybe you're taking some kind of risk, you feel you need to spend money on something? Or is it more like a sort of public ridicule if you fail? That's kind of what the fear is. Or the fear is journeying into the unknown. You have no blueprint of what to do. Nobody's telling you what to do. So you kind of fear that, you don't know if you have the confidence to decide the right thing to do. It's a lack of confidence in your own ability, or it's just scary. Like put in the chat what actually is your fear. What's the thing for you? Has self-doubt ever stopped you from trying? Is that happening right now? Is that something that's happened in the past? You want to do something, and on one level you feel like you can do it, but on another level you just are too afraid to take the first step. If you could relate to that, let me know, put that in the chat. That's certainly a very common thing. Those two things I mentioned are certainly common things. Congratulations to Bear Razor, who is the first person in the chat today. Thank you for being brave and doing that. Bear Razor's side hustle ideas are mowing the neighborhood lawn, operating a lemonade stand, taking care of the neighbors. Now, how do you mean taking care of the neighbors? You mean like taking care of the neighbors, or do you mean like taking care of them? Because this might be the latter. Yeah, those are some great suggestions. Now, the lemonade stand thing, that's kind of a little bit of a cliche, but you still get little kids and stuff to do that. where I live, I think last summer I noticed they had like little kids doing the lemonade stand thing near where I live, and that's awesome. It's awesome to see, and hopefully they don't have a totally terrible experience that sort of convinces them or conditions them never to try that kind of thing again, because it could be the beginning of something great. Medically can't get a GED from fast landing. Okay, that sucks. Hopefully medically you're doing okay there. Always labored, but getting too old. Hey, listen, fast landing, you're never too old, okay? Trust me on this. You're never too old. Age is very much a thing in the mind in many ways. You know what I mean? And you only lose when you give up. And if that's what you want to do, you certainly can do it. I can tell you that right now. Now, maybe there's a way to go about doing it that you haven't realized or you haven't tried yet. Okay, that's a thing. There's not. What's that expression? There's one way to skin a cat. That's a horrible expression, by the way, but it's true. I don't know why someone would want to skin a cat. Maybe, hey, it dates back to the old days. You know what I'm saying? Where times were different, people were different. Kind of a good thing we're no longer there sometimes. But yeah, there's many different ways of doing things, especially nowadays, especially with education. There's like many new options that are more convenient and that work for different people. Bear Razor says, whatever they need help with, whatever they're having trouble with, computer troubles, that's a great idea. And that cuts to the root of what business is. Business is about finding somebody's wants and needs, understanding them, and then being able to fill them. If you don't understand what they're looking for, or what they would like, or what they would need, it's kind of hard to provide that for them, So that's a great suggestion. Okay, I'm going to throw some ideas out for overcoming fear and self-doubt. You guys can tell me what you think. Okay, let's talk about this. So where does fear and doubt come from? Okay, fear and doubt, they're data. Okay, they show us that what we're thinking about, this thing that we're fearing, it matters to us. Okay, if it didn't matter, we wouldn't be afraid of it. It protects you from public failure and embarrassment. That's what fear does, right? You run away from danger. You run away from something risky, right? That's what it's designed to do. It's designed to protect you. It's like a self-preservation kind of thing, okay? So it's wanting you to be safe, right? Self-doubt is often just the fear of being seen trying when it comes to this stuff. It's embarrassing. You go out, you try something, you tell your whole family, you tell all your friends, you even do it in public, and then you fail, and it's not just sort of your journey or whatever you want to call it, like how you feel about it. It's doing it publicly, and, you feel like this tall. You're like, well, wasn't I stupid to believe that I can do this? And then I failed in front of everybody, right? That's usually where these things derive from in our heads, right? Okay. Your brain keeps you safe. That's the origin of this. That's what it's meant to do. Common fears in entrepreneurship. Okay. You obviously feel that you fear that you're going to fail in the sense that you're not going to make any money. You're not going to get any customers. You're not going to be able to sell whatever it is that you're doing, right? You think it might be a waste of time and money. I would put to you that, okay, let's say hypothetically, you try something, okay, and you fail. It doesn't work. You don't manage to sell the thing you're wanting to sell, or at least you fail to do it in sufficient quantity, right? And it ends up not taking off. But in the process of doing that, let's say you spent 6 months on it, okay? In the process of doing that, you learned a hell of a lot. You learned a lot about yourself. You learned a lot about people. You learned a lot about business. You learned what doesn't work. And you also learned what probably will work, okay? Because you've seen some of the major hurdles that have stood in your way. And you see that and you go, okay, I get an idea now of what I'm up against. So let's say hypothetically you tried this, it took 6 months, it failed, but in the process you learned what to do. Would that be a failure? I'll let you answer that. Okay. You fear that you're not cut out for this. That's another common fear, right? Right? Tell me if that's ever occurred to you. Is this really for me? I know some people do this, and some people can do this, and maybe I could do it too, but am I really cut out for it? Am I built for this? Or should I just do the default thing? Whatever that is, get a job, right? Okay. Now, these are all normal fears. You're a normal human being if this is what's driving how you feel about doing this kind of thing, going off on your own, deviating from the default path. Okay. Now, I would say you can offset that versus flipping it around saying, well, look, what if you succeed? You're trying to predict the future and you're fearing the worst. Well, that could happen, yes, but what could also happen is that you do succeed. What if you do succeed? What does that mean? What if someone's life changes because of something you've done or something you've built? What then? That's also a possibility, right? And, what if this is this journey that you're contemplating taking? What if this is the path that's going to be taking you to be the person that you were meant to be? What if this is your path? Right? You can offset all the sort of irrational fears against all the irrational success stories, that could transpire, right? That's the thing. When you haven't done anything, you haven't started, all of these possibilities could occur, okay? Let's talk about something constructive. Let's talk about strategies that might work. Okay, I can tell you something. Action builds bravery. Okay, doing things reduces fear because, first of all, you can't argue with actions. If you've done one little thing and it's been successful, that gives you confidence. Nobody can argue with it. It's a fact. It's something you've achieved. So the more little things that you manage to do, the more it chips away at the fear and the more confidence you get. Okay, it's evidence. It's evidence that, you're good. You know what you're doing. Something can come of this, right? Okay, so instead of just having done nothing, okay, what if you could do little small things? So at least you could say, well, hey, I've done this and it turned out okay, right? That's something that helps. Okay, now something that some people do is they do this in public. They build whatever it is that they're trying to do in public. Okay, now the idea is that you get support from people. If everybody knows what you're doing, everybody can see what you're doing, you can tap into resources. You can tap into other people's knowledge because they're aware of what you're doing. You could ask them for help. You could ask their advice. And the emotional side, the sort of self-confidence side, you're doing it in public. You could tap resources that sort of encourage you, that fuel your self-confidence and all this kind of thing. You don't have to do it hidden away in isolation where it feels like you're totally cut off from everyone and nobody understands what you're doing. You do it where you connect to people that have done it themselves. They can advise you. They can help you. They can work with you. Okay, there's strength in numbers. Now, if you're an introvert like me, that might not be the first thing that leaps to mind. Might not be necessarily your style, but there are some advantages in doing it. If you're an extrovert, then it's a no-brainer. You're just used to doing everything out in the open where everyone can see you. And, building on sort of encouragement and building on, other people helping you out. Another thing that some people do is rejection goals. They say, listen, the path forward is going to involve rejection. Okay? I'm going to try things that's not going to work. And I know this. Everyone does this. Some of the most successful people in the world have followed a path very similar to that. They've tried a lot of things and they failed in most of them. That's just how it goes. So knowing this, we can make it predictable. We could say, look, I'm going to try stuff and it's probably going to fail. But the fact that I'm trying things and failing, that's actually progress. It's better than not starting because I have to get through a lot of failure to get to a win. So I'm not going to look at a failure as, a failure. I'm going to look at a failure as progress, because at least I've tried something. And with each failure, I'm learning what not to do, and I'm getting ideas of what will work, like that kind of thing. So you change the way you look at failure. Okay, and that goes hand in hand with like things like managing your risk, so you don't fail in a huge way. You just fail like in a little controlled way. You try something pretty tame. If it fails, it's really not that big of a deal. You might waste your time doing it and you have to start again or something, but there's no real damage done. You pick yourself you dust yourself off, and away you go, and you keep going. Right? So you reframe failure as progress. And then the last thing I'm going to say before we get over to the chat again is, something called borrow belief, to borrow belief from people. If you don't believe in yourself yet, okay, you borrow the belief from mentors, clients, peers, that kind of thing. They believe in you, so you kind of see that and you go, oh, okay, well, if you think that I can do this, then, maybe I can, right? And that encourages me to try. So these are little things that might help, okay? Strategies that might work. I'm going to come back with my advice in a second, but let's go over to the chat. So forensic fraud accounting. Okay, here we go. Says, yeah, I'm scared and fearful to start a side hustle and end up failing by wasting time and money. So you're fearful to start. Are you fearful to start because you fear that you're going to be wasting time and money, or because you've started in the past and you feel that you've wasted time and money? That's what I'm wondering, because I could read that a couple of different ways. But either way, that's a valid thing. And thank you for sharing forensic fraud accounting. That's, what you're experiencing or feeling here is what millions of other people are. You're not alone in this. That's for damn sure. There's a couple of things you can do. Like my advice would be the kind of stuff I was going to tell everyone in a general sense was, this is what I would recommend, or things to think about anyway, is first of all, think of this in terms of baby steps, right? You could break down any problem into, much more manageable phases or stages or tasks or challenges, right? Okay, it's not just one monolithic thing that feels like shooting for the moon. It feels like if you think about it, you analyze it, you break it down, there's actually several discrete steps along the way, right? Okay. Now, one thing I can tell you is that results dispel fear. So if you set yourself something relatively easy to do at the beginning, you're not shooting for the moon, but you're doing something, okay? And you do it and you see it succeed, that little step, okay? That can go a long way to giving you the confidence that you can do something, right? That you can go the whole 9 yards. Okay, so results dispel fear. Here's a big one. I talk about this all the time. I don't hear a lot of other people talking about this, which is kind of weird, but it's to manage the financial risk. Okay, I've seen a lot of like would-be startup founders and business owners and people like this, entrepreneurs. They bet really big on something that they're attempting for the first time. It's like saying, okay, I bet you $1 million I'm going to get a hole in one, and I'm going to put up $100,000 of my own money on this bet. So if I do the golf thing and I try and get a hole in one, if I get it, I win $1 million. I win the jackpot. But if I don't, I lose big. I lose $100,000 of my own money or something like that. It's like, I wouldn't take that bet when it's your first attempt. Okay, if you're Tiger Woods or you're somebody really good, okay, sure, maybe taking that kind of bet might make sense. But it's a pretty tall order, and as we discussed a moment ago, rejection and failure, they are something that everybody encounters along the way, right? Everything you try, usually the first time you don't do so well at. It's like practicing a musical instrument, right? When you first attempt to play the song, it doesn't go so well on your first attempt. but you practice over and over and then you get there. Now, if you took the attitude that like, okay, I must be instantly good. If I try and play this instrument and I get a wrong note, then I might as well give up because it's never going to happen, right? Like if you're thinking like that, you will probably not succeed, at playing a musical instrument, right? You have to practice, you have to learn, and it's not going to sound great when you're practicing, but you have to do it. So as you go through that, you eventually get to the point where you can master it, right? You can play it well, right? So manage the financial risk. Like say like, look, I'm not expecting me to succeed in everything I try, but I'm expecting myself to succeed over time. And if other people can do it, I certainly can, that kind of thinking, right? The key thing is to manage the financial risk. Don't bet your life savings on like some long shot when you're just starting out. Maybe you risk your time being wasted, but you don't really risk anything major. Forensic fraud accounting. Were you fearful when you started your YouTube channel? Absolutely not. I've started a lot riskier things than that. I can tell you, this was like nothing because first of all, there's no cost really other than your time. It's not like you're dropping your life savings to start it. You know what I mean? A lot of business stuff, it kind of feels like that. You have to put money in first to invest in something, right? Now there's kind of a smart way to do it and a dumb way to do it. What I suppose I could have done, if you want to use the YouTube channel as an example, is you could say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a YouTuber. So first of all, I'm going to build myself a YouTube studio. So essentially, I'm going to build like a second house. It's going to be a studio. And I'm going to equip it with the latest audio-visual equipment. I'm going to have it networked, wireless networked. I'm going to secure contracts with, editors or sponsors or, like all the people you could connect with. I'm going to pay them a retainer to secure their services. And this is all before I've even started, before I've picked a name or done anything, right? So it's like when you start, you're already in it for like $100,000 or $200,000 or whatever. It's like it would be the equivalent of doing that, right? Now, do you need to start like that? Absolutely not. You could start a YouTube channel as this is a well-known thing with basically what you have. If you got a smartphone that's got a camera on it and you have access to the internet, that's all you need to start a YouTube channel, right? So you don't have to drop $200,000 to start a YouTube channel, right? Some people choose to do it that way. They build an entire like studio and they, like I've seen that almost like traditional media, they would build a whole recording studio, like TV studio, this huge space with like dollies and cameras, and they'd hire employees like hosts of shows and things like this, and their whole plan is to do a YouTube channel, but they know nothing about doing a YouTube channel. So if they don't get instant success immediately, the whole thing collapses because they can't afford it, So one of the things that really helps is not dropping a ton of cash on what you're doing. You just say like, look, I realize it's probably going to be a rocky start, so I'm not going to drop a bunch of cash. What I'm going to work on is I'm going to work on the fundamentals. Like how can I make a video that anyone would want to watch? Let's solve that problem first, and then I can worry about upgrading later on. You know what I mean? So it's like the way you do it. So that's what I'd say about managing the financial risk and thinking in terms of baby steps. You could apply this model to almost any business, any sort of thing you're trying to do, whether it's a side hustle or you want to start your own company, whatever. Okay. The other thing I want to say is don't always take the default path. Okay. If you're trying to elevate yourself above the crowd in some way that you stand out, so people pick you, people know you, right? If you're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, it's kind of hard to elevate yourself above the crowd. A lot of people they don't think like this. I mean, I don't know about you guys. When I was a teenager, like about 1.5 million years ago, I, like a lot of teenagers, certainly back then, I had a kind of a rebellious streak. And I didn't like school. I didn't like condescending teachers kind of imposing rules on me all the time, especially rules that seemed like stupid or self-serving. The rule is good for you. It's not good for me. It actually is bad for me. I really had a problem with that. And so in the stuff I've done in my life that's been like sort of entrepreneurship related, I've kind of intentionally tapped that attitude and said like, look, you guys are all doing this and that's great. I'm going to do this. Okay. I don't care if I'm a minority of one, I'm going to do this because I believe that it has potential, and just because nobody else is coming with me, that doesn't deter me necessarily. People tell me you can't do it that way. And, what I'm wondering is, how can you say that if you've never tried? You're all repeating that party line to me, but you've never done it. I don't think you've ever seen anyone do it. So you're just repeating this to me like it's a fact. It's not a fact. How would you know? Now, some of the things I've then done is gone on and tried it. And yeah, it doesn't work for the reasons they said. Fair enough. But other things do work out. And these people had no clue what they were talking about. They were repeating something they'd heard others say and showed a remarkable lack of critical thinking skills. They just parroted it and accepted it as true when they don't know. There's no evidence, and it turns out they're wrong. And I managed to do it. And I cleaned up because of it. That stuff happens too. How do you know which one this is? You don't until you try it. So if you can try things, you manage the risk, you don't go bankrupt doing it, you don't kill yourself doing it, you can stumble upon things that are pretty amazing. Saku says, it should be noted that your boss better not find out that there is something you don't know. Okay, if you want to go for irrational fear, sure. I don't think this has anything to do with your boss, if you're, first of all, if you're doing something unrelated to your job, your day job, then it doesn't matter. That doesn't enter into it. If you are doing something that's very closely related to your day job, then yes, you need to compartmentalize these two worlds. You don't go to your day job and start blabbing all about how you're doing this exact work on the side at home. That's usually not a good thing. So hopefully that's common sense for a lot of people, but if that hasn't occurred to you, yeah, that is a thing. So Saku is correct to sort of bring that up and remind us of that, if that's the situation you're in. Digital Dream Disc says, have you ever heard of an interviewer ask for your references, what your weaknesses are? Okay, well, we're not really talking about job interviews here. This happened to me and I didn't get the job. Okay, no problem. Listen, in about an hour, I'm doing a live stream on job search. Okay, so if you want to come back for that, we can get into it then. We're talking about something else right here. This is about side hustles. Okay, so we're talking about like advice for baby steps for overcoming your fear. Okay, especially with entrepreneurship, with side hustles, with anything you want to do. Incidentally, this kind of applies to creative / artistic things too. It's the same kind of idea, right? Now, the other thing I want to mention to people is that, like, if you're thinking of doing your own thing, like a side hustle or a business, okay, and you're worried because you don't really know how it works or what to expect or what you should do, if you don't know this yet, okay, this is actually a field of study. It's called business, and within business, it's a specific area called entrepreneurship. And that is a specific field of study. So it's not like you're trying to do something that there are no rules for, there's no guidance for. This is a topic that you can learn in school or out of school, and people have learned about it and developed a playbook of what tends to work and what tends not to work. So there's a lot of learning out there that can guide you, okay? And I would encourage you to do it. If this is something you want to do, but you feel kind of afraid to start, you feel like you're getting into something that you really don't understand, you're outside your comfort zone, you're afraid of, like, I don't want to, it's almost like saying, I'm going to do heart surgery on someone when I'm not a doctor, and I'm afraid of even attempting that because I realize that I don't know what I'm doing and that bad things can happen. I don't want to even attempt that until I feel more confident in myself, until I take a medical degree or something. Then I would feel confident doing it. And yes, there is a medical degree equivalent for this kind of stuff. It's called entrepreneurship. So you can read books on it, and it will tell you if you have an idea for like what you want to do. You want to go out on your own and make money, not by getting a job with an employer and having them sort of set like the rules and the system for you. You want to do your own thing. That's called entrepreneurship. It's not a complete jungle. There's a lot of learning that you can do on this topic that'll inform you what to do, what tends to work. And then you will not only know what to do, but you'll also feel more confident in yourself that you're doing the right thing. It seems like less of a risk, because it is, right? So if you're interested in this and you have an ambition to do this, learn about it, okay? Now, there are many options available for you, okay? And yes, I have a course right here that if you want to learn that with me, I have a course that is an option for some people in specific situations, okay? But, regardless of, what you choose or how you choose to learn, learn, okay? Learning is always good. And if you have an ambition to do this, you can learn how to go about it the right way, okay? Let's go back to you guys before I say anything else. Forensic Fraud Accounting says, I like your idea of starting small so any failure would be minimal. Yeah, exactly. You manage your risk. Like, for example, like the YouTube example that I said a moment ago, some people, they build an entire recording studio, like a TV studio. They hire all the people. They secure all the contracts. They do all this in advance before they've ever made a video. And they just assume that as soon as they start making videos, each one's going to get millions of views and they're going to get all kinds of sponsorship money and, whatever. And it's like, that doesn't happen immediately, right? And so the whole thing collapses because they've invested so much money into it. It has to pay off big time very soon, and it doesn't, right? What a lot of people do is they sort of don't do that. They don't spend any money on a YouTube channel. They just grab their phone and they start, making videos, uploading it, whatever. So they've invested very little money into it, right? So what that means is that you can afford it not to take off immediately, but maybe it takes off after a year or a year and a half or whatever, It's like, then it makes sense for you because you haven't really lost anything, right? And then whatever it does is like a profit in a way, If you do give up or if it does fail, the only thing you lose is your time. You've wasted your time in a sense. You put all this time into making videos and it never went anywhere. But you didn't lose any money, right? So the idea is that it's a very simple equation. You put less money in and then you have less requirements for it to pay off. Now, have you guys ever heard of somebody called what was his name? Roger Corman. He was a guy that did a lot of really cheap movies, like back in the 80s and stuff, the 1980s. Roger Corman. And sometimes some of them were pretty like lowbrow kind of thing, but not all of them were. And he discovered, incidentally, people like James Cameron and stuff like that. But the idea was that he made unlike Hollywood today, it's pretty much the exact opposite of Hollywood today. He made I can't remember his quote. He made 100 movies. And he didn't lose money on any of them. And it was because they were so cheap. So each movie, you only had to make $100,000 or something for it to break even or whatever, right? So he would make a movie for literally $50,000, and the price of a car, he would make a movie, And it wouldn't be an amazing movie, but it was good enough. It was halfway decent, and they'd get it played in theaters, and he would make several times his investment with each movie. That was typical for him, And throughout his career, you had people criticizing him. The stuff you do is cheap and bad and whatever. But it's like, hey, I've never lost money, And the idea is you take that idea to an extreme level where you say, I'm not going to put anything into it, but I'm going to create something that's profitable. It makes back 8 times its original investment because the original investment was so low. Now you look at Hollywood today, they're dropping $300 million on making a movie. It has to make something in the area of $600 million just to break even, So, okay, it makes a couple $100 million, like, which normally would be a great thing. But the problem is you put so much money into it that you need to make $600 million just to break even. It's a failure. You lost money. You know what I mean? So that's the basic idea. If you can start by really streamlining what you do, that can be very useful in the beginning. You know, it also means that if you do fail, if it ends up not working, you get up, you dust yourself off, you keep going because you can. You know, you haven't blown your life savings. You haven't really lost anything other than your time was wasted. Now, if you learned a ton of stuff, is your time really wasted? It's wasted in the sense that, you know, this business idea failed, or at least the form you tried it in failed, right? Anyway, you know, like that's definitely an angle of this. I see there's 28 people here. Thank you for being here. Hopefully you're getting something out of this. Anyway, I got a couple more things I want to say just to finish off by what I wrote down in my notes here that I made like 2 minutes before I went live. So anyway, what I wanted to say was that most people never even try. Okay, that's the thing. If you try to do something on your own, like with business or whatever, you're already like ahead of most people because they never even try anything. And many people win simply because they try. You know, I've done that. I feel that I have. Everything that I've tried, even like a lot of failures that I had, certainly when I was starting out, they were never really failures because I learned a ton of things that regular people don't learn because they've never tried anything like this, you know? And the other thing is that the journey is long. Okay. So if you start small, you start learning things about yourself and about business and about people, right? You'll eventually get there. You just have to stay in the game. I would challenge everyone, get in the chat, tell me one action you're going to take this week. No matter how mundane and how small, what are you going to do this week? If this is something you really want to do, what are you going to do this week that's going to further that? It's going to get you closer to your goal. Let me know what that is. Barringer, is that how you say that? Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Says, I'm 53. I've been out of work for a while due to acting as a caretaker for my mom. I need to get back into the workforce, but nobody is willing to hire me and do the job description, and job descriptions intimidate me. Okay, we're not really talking about job search here, but I will be in an hour if you want to come back. But the bottom line is, I'll just say this. It's certainly possible. You're going to certainly be able to do this, okay? It's not rocket science, but there is a bit of a process to it, okay? So you just follow that process and you'll be fine. Now, we can get into it in about an hour. We can get into details if you would want to come back, if you're able to come back. Forensic Accounting says, I'm planning to start anti-fraud certification prep course for a fraud exam. Any suggestions on how I should start or think about? Okay, so here's the deal. Like, do I know about that stuff? No, that's not my area. But here's what I would say. If you want to learn about it, okay, connect to people who are in this world, who teach anti-fraud courses in educational establishments. Excuse me. Talk to people who are working at the bodies that certify those courses, you know, that give them accreditation, right? If you could learn how to do information interviews, if you don't know how to do this, okay, you can sit down with all these people and have a conversation with them, and you will learn so much about what to do, what not to do. You will avoid so many pitfalls, and you will be able to avoid like a lot of things that you would be spending sometimes years on realizing this is not the way to do it. You know what I mean? You'd also have access to a lot of resources, people that can help you, people that can point you in the right direction, this kind of thing. So that's like usually a good place to start. Now, if you don't know how to do that, you don't know how to get an informational interview. I'm trying to think, do I have any videos on that? There's a video I always refer people to. I believe it's linked in the description box under this video. It's called How Successful People Get Jobs. That's what the video is called. I don't know if it's linked in this live stream because this is about entrepreneurship. But Google that. Like go to my YouTube channel and just say The Company's Expert, How Successful People Get Jobs. That shows you kind of the process of how to get informational interviews, or at least it comes very close to it. So check that out. And that's the kind of thing that you can do. And you just do informational interviews with people that are in all parts of this world, right? So the people that accredit those courses, the people that teach those courses, the institutions that host those courses, curriculum developers that develop those courses, customers who buy those courses, companies that hire people who have taken those courses. If you talk to all these people, you ask them all kinds of questions about how it works, and they tell you. And you also have them as resources to be able to pick up the phone and ask them a question. That's incredibly valuable. So that'll really point you in the right direction in terms of doing this thing that you want to do with these fraud courses. Incidentally, just for people who are who are interested, if you want to learn business, I have a course that helps you with that. Okay, the $100 MBA, check it out. I've also done a video that's a FAQ video, so it explains the whole course, how it works, what you get, so it's transparent. Check that out. The links to the course and to that video with the details are both linked in the description box below this live stream. If you're wanting to learn that, that's a way to learn all of this with me. SJ's Redemption says, get my pricing structure together for my photography services. Okay, right on. Yeah, I encourage you to do that. It's a good thing always if you haven't already done this, is to look around and see what other people are doing, right? Wouldn't it be great if you could find out who their customers were, right? So you have their pricing, you have the services they offer, and then you also know who's buying their services. My understanding for like photography, a lot of it is your customers will be more business clients as opposed to like individuals, like members of the public. It'll be more business clients. Like those are the people that pay you to do work, right? That's my understanding about photography. I'm not sure if that's accurate. I'm not a photographer, but that's what I've been given to understand. Digital Dream Discs says, I will keep learning how to use AI to automate things. AI is getting better at coding. Yes. It's not, like in many ways, it's not here yet. We can see the potential. It is here in a limited way. We can see the potential it has. We can see how this could be really amazing for certain things. But in a lot of ways, it's not actually here yet. We're seeing a preview of what it's going to be. It can already do stuff for us now, and that's already disruptive and it's changing everything. But we can really see how this is going to be even more disruptive in the future. So, embrace that. Recognize it for the useful tool that it is. It's still a tool. It's nothing more than a tool, but it's a damn useful tool. Behringer says, my issue with trying to do a side hustle or starting my own business is not understanding the tax laws and required permits and accounting for it. Okay, so Behringer, I got news for you. You don't need to, okay? You don't need to understand any of that stuff. If you can't bring in money from your business, what the hell does that matter? You know what I mean? Like, why are you worried about like how much of this I'm going to give to the government and how I will be able to do it when you haven't made any money yet? That's a problem you look forward to. And quite frankly, you want to learn that stuff? Here's what you do. You get an accountant and they do it. That's how you do that stuff. Your goal is to be in a position where you have money coming in. So this is a problem you look forward to because it means that you're making some serious money with it, right? And at that point, you will be able to afford, an accountant who can take care of all of this crap for you, and you don't have to learn all the finer points of it. Or if you really want to get into the weeds, they can explain it all to you. That's the good news. So you don't have to be intimidated by this, because whichever way you slice it, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant right now. The only time it will become relevant is when you've got the money rolling in, and I mean, to the level that it's almost replacing your day job. Like that's the level that you would have to have of this revenue stream for it to become serious, where you really need to do this right. Okay. Until you get to that point, you don't have to worry about this. Not in any real sense. You know what I'm saying? Like I've also seen many people do all this scud work. They've worried about patents. They worried about intellectual property and trade secrets and all this kind. It's like they haven't made a single dollar or whatever currency from their thing yet. It's like you're putting the cart way before the horse. Get it so it's making money. Then all the other stuff like patents and IP, and then all the accounting and tax stuff, and all the other things you got to do, like registering your company name and all this kind. Then that stuff makes sense, right? The first thing you need to do is see if you can get money coming in. That's all you need to do as step one. Everything else is irrelevant, because if you can't get that first step, then nothing else matters. You know what I mean? There's no need for any of the other things. And this is a good thing. It makes the problem very, very simple. You don't have to go in 15 directions at once. You have to go in one direction, and that is to make sales. If you have a thing that you think other people could use that would benefit them, try and sell it. Try and get money coming in from customers, right? Other people, they obsess about grants and like loan programs, like government assistance programs for entrepreneurship type things. There are a lot of people that really get into that. They know every program, and they've applied for every grant and every, bursary and all this kind of stuff. And that's all they spend their time on. So they've got money coming in, but it's not real money. It's the illusion of success, because people are giving you loans and people are giving you grants, but you haven't actually gotten a customer yet. You don't even know this is going to work. So they spend all their time worrying about this kind of thing and no time actually working on the fundamentals of their business, seeing if it even works, right? You don't have to worry about all of that. Not now. So that's kind of, I believe, kind of where my notes end. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Do the thing I ask you to do. Get in the chat. Let me know a side hustle idea that you think is good. We could kick it around. And number two, tell me what you're going to do in the next week to overcome your fear. Because that's the topic of this live stream, overcoming fear and self-doubt. So what are you going to do this week that's going to bring you closer to your goal, whatever your goal is? Doing a side hustle, starting a business, learning how to sell to somebody, right? Whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, you can do this. I was saying that most never try, many win because they actually try. You start on that path. That's going to take you to your end goal, which is success. It's a long journey. Chat one action you'll take this week. And just a reminder, I have, as you can see on the screen, I have this other YouTube channel, The Company's Expert 3. So you can subscribe to that. That's where I talk about a lot of this stuff. How to do various business things in the world of entrepreneurship and side hustles. Check that out. Go there and subscribe. Watch some of the videos. I am live doing this live stream once a week, every Monday at this time. And you can come back. You can ask questions or anything like that. I'll help you out as much as I can. There are 24 people here. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome, by the way. And you're awesome for even wanting to do this, This is how the world moves forward, right? Not by doing the default thing, but by, wanting to do your own thing. And let me tell you, it's a lot more efficient when you work for yourself. You're not spending time doing stupid things that are pointless. You're actually doing things that matter. Barringer says, I have skills in digital artwork. Well, good. Like that's the beginning of a lot of things, just having some skills and things. So the challenge then is monetizing it. Who could use that? And you've got to think beyond just the obvious traditional things. Think of new things. Think of like new and exciting ways. The digital artwork is important, I mean, the world is very visual. You know what I'm saying? Our sight, our vision is like the way most things reach us. So you're not going to tell me that, there's no way to monetize somebody who understands how to make things look cool. You know what I mean? It's about thinking like, okay, how can I take what I know to improve something, to serve something, to meet somebody's wants or needs, and then not just have it stop at an idea, but actually go out, prove it, and put this into action, see if you can improve something and get money for it. If something's of value, you can make money with it. The only question is how. Herr Tiss says, as a software developer, I have no idea where to find clients for a side hustle. Well, as a software developer, you're probably familiar with this thing called the internet, right? And social media. With the power of a smartphone, not foam. I don't know what smart foam is. There was a movie they made called The Stuff in the 80s. It was about like foam that killed people, right? It was like sentient and it like was evil and it killed everybody. Anyway, but that's not this. If you have a smartphone, just by knowing what to do, you can reach millions of people. You can affect millions of people. You can influence millions of people, right? You can affect their behavior. You can have them behave the way you would have them behave. And one of the ways that you might do that is get them to buy your thing because they see how cool it is and they see how useful it is and how it can make their lives easier or better, right? It's just knowing what to say and what to do. That's the challenge, of course. But that's the only thing standing between you and unimaginable success is just knowing what to do. You know what I mean? That's the journey that people are really on when they do business, when they do entrepreneurship. It's about understanding your customer, understanding really what they're looking for, what they can use, what they need, and knowing that better than anyone else. It's all about knowledge, right? Now, you're an introvert. Introverts are really good with data, with knowledge. I'm an introvert. It's like I'm a tactical introvert. I have a degree in engineering for what that's worth. You know what I mean? I'm not a computer engineer, but I understand I have some kind of affinity with developers and computer engineers. It's all about information, right? It's just that it's dealing with people, right? But the thing is, people are just people on another computer somewhere else in the world that are on the internet. And you can reach them via social networking and other things, right? You're looking at me over the internet, right? You know what I mean? So it's really not the problem I think the most people think it is, right? If you're an introvert, you don't have to deal with another living person like in the flesh. You can deal with it purely remotely. Excuse me, God. In a very abstract way, right? It's very similar to writing code in a way. And it becomes a thing where like, look, if I put this message out and I do it over this channel, I have a statistical probability of this happening. People buy something, or people go somewhere, or people tell me something, right? It's that kind of thing, right? Now, I really don't know the world of software. I used to run an IT company like over 20 years ago. So everything I know about IT is like totally obsolete. And I haven't really kept up with that stuff at all. But like, okay, you write an app, make like an app so good that whatever it is, that people will want to use it. And they'll even recommend it to their friends. That's your job. You think you can do that? You don't have to learn about people. You don't have to like worry about selling anything. Just make an app that whatever it does it so well that, whoever uses it, most people, They think this is awesome. I'm going to keep using it. And then they might even recommend it to somebody else, you know? That's your challenge. So if you're a software engineer, you're a software developer, you've got the tools to do this. You just have to now think, what could I do that people would want, you know? That's a huge part of doing this. Forensic Fraud Accounting says, thanks for the awesome feedback to do information delivery regarding starting a prep course. Yeah, because once again, like coincidentally, knowledge is power, right? Like if you knew exactly what to do, you knew exactly how to start up your course, you knew exactly what people would be interested in taking that course, you knew exactly where those people were on the internet, how to reach them, and then you knew exactly what to say to them to make them want to register for your course and pay the fees or whatever, right? And, you know, other things. You knew exactly what to put in the course that when those people took it, it really opened doors for them and gave them something valuable. Like, it's all about knowing all this stuff, right? So how successful you're going to be in this plan to do a fraud course is going to be directly proportional to how much knowledge you have on those questions, right? So this is what is going to lead to success, answering those questions. Who is interested in this course? Why are they interested? Where are they? How do they think? What do they respond to? How can I reach them? What do I say to them to make them aware of this and make it appealing to them? You know, what can I put in the course? What is the industry really calling for? What are companies looking for? You know, so that people who have my course, they can go into the, you know, work for companies and achieve things because of this course that I've given them, you know? And then the companies see that and they go, ah, that's really valuable. You're really valuable because you have taken this course. You know what I mean? Like, getting answers to that is going to be directly proportional to how successful you will be, right? So that's the journey you're really on, is getting that knowledge. How do you get the knowledge? There's many ways, but one thing is you probe the world, you probe the internet, you probe people, right? To see, you know, what are you looking for? Maybe you start with the companies, you know, like, what are you looking for in terms of your employees? Who do you want to hire? What capabilities do they have? Oh, they understand like fraud. They understand how to detect it. They understand the ways that are just coming down the pike now, like futuristic ways of committing fraud. And they are one step ahead and they detect it, you know, and it takes this form and it manifests itself this way. They have this effect, you know, so it's like, okay, that's what I need to put in my course. Now, what is that content? Where can I find that? Here's where I find it. And here's how I'm going to teach it. Right? You know, and so on and so forth. So it's like filling in those blanks, so getting answers for all those questions. That's what's going to lead you to success. Now, if you can start out by doing informational interviews with the people that know all the answers, maybe you interview companies, they can tell you what results they're looking for. Okay, this is what we specifically are paying attention to, and the immediate problem that we have, and what we're hoping that someone with a background in fraud will be able to do for us. You know, specifically, right? You know, so it's like, okay, I'm going to get an answer to that. I'm going to incorporate that, right? And it's a matter of filling in those blanks. So you can start by talking to people if there are people out there that know in their heads, like, exactly what you're wanting to know, right? And then there's other ways of learning that information too. It's by sort of doing, by trying things, by probing to see, does this work? Does that work? You know, that kind of thing, right? But that's the slow tools. If you knew all of that, this would be easy. You would know exactly what to do. You do it. You know the easy way to do it, where it's cheap, where it's possible. You do that. It gets the same result, right? Bam. You have clients. Bam. They go out. They add a lot of value for companies or whatever. That value is noticed, right? They are willing to write you recommendations. They're willing to recommend you, blah, blah. It just snowballs. It would be easy, you know? It's hard because you don't have that knowledge yet, right? So that's the journey you're really going down. Absolutely, I can do that, and spot on for being an introvert. Yeah, exactly. You know, I'll tell you something, though. You look at the inventors, the innovators, the people that have made discoveries that have driven the world forward. To a person, they are introverts. They're not the ones talking to everybody and finding favor with everyone and relating to everybody. That's not the people that are the innovators. The innovators are the weird people, the ones that don't talk to anyone because they're obsessed with some weird technical problem that nobody else is tuned into. And not only are they kind of interested in it, but they're obsessed to a disturbing degree. And they spend their whole life working on it, and bam, they make a discovery. And that changes the world, It's don't take my word for it. Go look, look at the history of people that have innovated. They're all introverts, and they're all weird, but weird in a good way. You know what I mean? It's don't let this world that we live in tell you that you're worth less because you're an introvert. It's introverts are what drive this damn world forward. All the extroverts, they adopt our ideas, not the other way around. So just so you know, if we're doing the whole introvert extrovert thing, that's the reality, Don't get me wrong, there are some definite advantages in a practical sense of being extrovert. They basically derive from the fact, at least in my experience, they derive from the fact that you don't come up with the answers yourself, because it's maybe unrealistic for you to solve everything yourself. But what extroverts can do is they can sort of tap other people who have the answer and borrow it. So they have the answer, not because they came up with it, but because they learned it from someone else. They were connected to someone who did know the answer, and they got that person to tell them the answer. Not because they figured it out themselves. Introverts will try and figure out the answer, in a vacuum. That's our tendency, right? And there are definite advantages to both. Anyway. Okay, I've sort of exhausted everything I wanted to say. I'm just simply here responding to your questions. So if you'd like me to stick around, if you have any questions, get in the chat. Other than that, I will wind this down. Forensic Fraud Accounting says, next steps, contact one or two people who are in education space on creating the course. Yeah, now listen, they're not going to help you to create something that's a rival to them. Okay, so you got to be a little bit diplomatic in how you get information from them. You basically ask, what's your opinion on this? What do you think is coming down the pike? What do people want? Has that changed? Things like this. You kind of ask questions like that. You would not say, so I'm starting a thing that's going to be in direct competition with you. How would I do it? It's you know what I mean? You just have to be, you have to learn kind of how to go about getting the information, right? It's really not that hard. It just there's some basic things you need to know. So tune into that, right? It's not about you when you talk to them, it's about them, right? So you're there not to ask them questions that help you. You're there to get their opinions, get their prediction, tell their story. What did they do? How did it turn out? That's what people will speak to. That's what people want to speak to. They'll find it very flattering that, you're interested. Here's someone who's interested in what you think. It's very flattering. That's what gets people to talk. So you don't want to interrogate them about the topic. You want to ask them about their opinions and history and all that kind of stuff. That's usually the way to go. So anyway, learn about that stuff. If you do want to learn about it, specifically, I put a lot of that into this course. I mean, it's in the context of getting jobs, but I talk about informational interviews, that kind of thing. So you can check that out if you want. I do have some free stuff on my YouTube channel. I don't think I've talked about informational interviews just in isolation. I think I've always talked about them connected with getting a job. That's kind of how I've always done it, because my channel is mainly about job search. This is part of the same thing. It's how to make your way in this world, how to make money, how to survive. For most people, hey, working as an employee is the way to go. You need an agent to turn your value into cash. You can't do it yourself, so you make an arrangement with an employer. They're the agent. They understand how to turn your value into cash. You don't know that. You don't want to deal with that. You don't want to learn it. So you say, okay, I'd rather live in ignorance. I don't want to have to learn that, but I understand that you know how to do that. So here's the deal. I will provide my services to you, and then you turn my value into money, and then you take a cut, and then you give me what's left over. Right? Usually they take a big cut and give you what's left over. If you knew how to generate cash yourself directly from customers by doing your thing, you'd be in business for yourself, and you keep all of the money that you generate. That's the idea. You don't give like 50 or 60% to an agent. You keep it all. Now, maybe you don't have the reach that an employer has. Maybe you don't have the economies of scale that an employer has, but you're keeping 100% of your value. You're not giving 60% of it away at source. So other people, they go down that path. Instead of, like, let's say you know how to be a welder or something. You can get a job as a welder working for a big company that builds ships or something, right? Or you could go into business for yourself as a freelance welder. You need a bit of welding done here, need a bit of welding done there. You do contract work. You decide how much welding you do. You decide who you work for, what type of work you do, under what conditions. You set the price. If people will pay it, great. And you call the shots. There are pros and there are cons. There's a lot of pros. One of the big pros is that the sky is the limit. Nobody's going to cap your pay. Your pay is whatever you can make. You know what I mean? Maybe you hire other people to work under you, and they do welding or they do complementary things, and you become the employer, like whatever. Maybe you don't just do exactly what every other welder does. Maybe you do something that adds value in some way. So like it's a creative element. What can I do that will add value? And if I have some ideas, because I've worked with a lot of companies that need welding, and I understand how they think, maybe I can provide them something different that they really like, that nobody else is doing, and that gives me an edge, and that allows me to make even more money. So if you think like that, and this kind of appeals to you, you're not working under somebody's thumb, this is a great thing to do, right? But you learn how to turn your value directly into cash. You're not dependent on anyone to do that for you. You don't have to worry about layoffs or anything. You can make money wherever you are. That's the advantage, or one of the advantages. Okay, there are 30 people here. Thank you for being here. Hopefully you got something out of this today. Listen, if you are wanting to do a side hustle or start your own business or anything like that, you can. This is an established, known thing. It's got a playbook. You can learn all about it. It's called entrepreneurship. It's an area of business. It's taught in schools. It's been studied for hundreds of years. And you can learn all the principles, and then you can apply them in your life. So I would recommend that anyone who's interested in this, consider learning business. You don't have to go to school necessarily. There are many options. Yes, I've got a course that, you could learn it through me, right? That'll teach you everything you need to know. And then now you understand how business works. Business is the scientific study of how to make money. That's what it is. It's a pretty useful thing to know. If you want to make money, it teaches you how to do that, how it all works. So learn about that stuff. The more you learn, the further you'll go. And then whatever your specific business idea, I encourage you to try it. Manage your risk. Don't drop huge amounts of money on these things, but just maybe risk your time, risk your effort, if you're worried, if you have issues of confidence, like self-confidence, there's many ways to dispel those. One of them is like learning your craft, right? So that's the other reason I recommend people learn about business, because when you learn how everything works and you see like what you need to do, that sort of helps you feel like, okay, I could do this. I know I'm getting a roadmap of what I need to do, and I'm understanding the principles. That makes me feel more confident, And I recommend that you don't just sit and listen to advice like me or anyone else. Try things, limit your risk, and then go try things. That's how you'll grow as a person. Excuse me, God. Man, where I live right now, we've got air quality issues because of like wildfires and stuff like that. So I can tell that stuff is in the air. I have asthma to begin with, and then that's not helping. But anyway, yes, I encourage you to do this stuff. And I'm here every Monday if you have questions. That's kind of what I'm doing. So best of luck. Thank you for being here. I wish you every luck in the future. Take care of yourselves. You're awesome.